If you've ever lived deep in the Appalachian Mountains, you know that the woods have a way of swallowing the light. Growing up in a heavily isolated cabin miles away from the nearest town, my family had a set of rules. Most of them were normal. Don't go into the deep woods alone. Lock the doors. But there was one rule that my grandfather enforced with absolute terrifying strictness. Every evening, exactly at 6:30 p.m., before the sun completely dipped below the tree line, we had to pour a thick, unbroken line of crushed rock salt across the front and back doorways. I used to think it was just some old superstition to keep insects out, but my grandfather always said, "The salt doesn't keep the bugs out, kid. It keeps the liars out." It happened in late November. I was 17. My parents had driven down to the city for a medical emergency with my aunt, leaving me alone in the cabin for the night. The nearest neighbor was a 20-minute drive through dirt roads. The winter wind was howling outside, rattling the old wooden window frames. Before they left, my mother looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Check the salt, lock the deadbolt, and if you hear anything after dark, do not look out the window." I nodded, poured the rock salt perfectly across the threshold, locked up, and spent the night playing video games in the living room. Around 1:15 a.m., the wind suddenly died down, the kind of absolute dead silence that makes your ears ring. Then I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps on the heavy wooden front door. My blood ran cold. Nobody comes out this far at 1 a.m. I muted the TV and stood frozen in the middle of the room. Then a voice called out from the other side, "Hey, kiddo, open up. It's freezing out here." My heart stopped. It was my dad's voice. The exact tone, the slight rasp, the way he called me kiddo. But my parents weren't supposed to be back until the next afternoon. "Dad?" I called out, my voice trembling. "Yeah, it's me," the voice replied. "The car broke down a mile back. I walked the rest of the way. Open the door. I can't feel my hands." Logic told me to open it. It sounded just like him, but an overwhelming primal sense of dread anchored my feet to the floor. Something was horribly wrong. The voice lacked emotion. It was completely flat, like a recording played out of a cheap speaker. "Come on, open the door," the voice said again. This time, it didn't sound like a request. Against my mother's strict warning, I crept toward the door and slowly peered through the frosted glass pane next to it. Standing on the porch was a tall, unnaturally thin figure wearing my dad's heavy winter coat. But it wasn't my dad. The porch light illuminated its face. The skin was pale and stretched too tight over the skull. It had my father's features, but its eyes were wide, unblinking, and entirely black. It was smiling a terrifying, ear-to-ear grin. It saw me looking. The creature stepped forward, reaching its long, pale hand toward the doorknob. But the moment its foot hovered over the thick line of rock salt I had poured, the entity flinched violently. A sickening, sizzling sound echoed in the quiet night like meat thrown onto a hot grill. It let out a distorted, high-pitched screech that sounded like radio static mixed with a human scream, and scrambled backward into the absolute darkness of the tree line on all fours. I sat with my back against that door until the sun came up, clutching a heavy flashlight, terrified to even blink. When my parents finally pulled into the driveway at noon the next day, I ran outside. The first thing I noticed wasn't the relief on my dad's real face. It was the thick line of rock salt on the porch, right in the center, where that thing had tried to step. The white salt had turned completely pitch black, as if it had been burned by hellfire. I still live in the mountains, but no matter where I stay, I never, ever sleep without a line of salt at my door. Because out here in the dark, the things that call your name aren't always human. Working security at a decommissioned textile factory in Ohio is exactly as boring as it sounds. The place was massive, all rusted metal walkways, flickering fluorescent lights, and shadows that seemed to stretch on forever. I worked the midnight to 8 a.m. shift entirely alone. My only company was the hum of the vending machine in the break room and the occasional groan of the settling building. My supervisor, Mr. Miller, was a strict guy. He'd usually call the front desk landline at exactly 2 a.m. just to make sure I hadn't fallen asleep. But tonight was different. Mr. Miller was in Florida for his daughter's wedding. I was completely off the radar. Around 3:15 a.m., I was doing my rounds on the second floor when my walkie-talkie hissed to life. Static spat through the speaker, followed by a voice. "Hey, Dave, you copy?" I stopped dead in my tracks. It was Mr. Miller. The deep, gravelly voice was unmistakable. I pressed the talk button, confused. "Mr. Miller? I thought you were in Florida. Flight got delayed." The voice crackled back instantly. "Listen, the main breaker in the sub-basement just tripped. Half the cameras are down. I need you to go down there and flip the switch." Something felt entirely wrong. The sub-basement was a pitch-black labyrinth of old pipes and water damage. We were strictly told never to go down there alone due to the structural hazards. "Sir, you told me explicitly never to enter the sub-basement," I replied, my thumb trembling on the button. "Just do your job. Dave, I'm waiting for you down here. It's too dark." That sentence sent a massive spike of adrenaline through my chest. "I'm waiting for you down here." I didn't move toward the basement. Instead, I pulled out my cell phone and dialed Mr. Miller's personal number. It rang 3 times before he answered. He sounded half asleep with the muffled sound of a hotel air conditioner in the background. "Dave, what is it? It's 3 in the morning." My blood turned to ice. "Mr. Miller, are you in Florida?" "Of course I am. What's wrong with you?" I hung up. The walkie-talkie on my belt hissed again. "Dave, come down here. It's too dark." It wasn't just his voice anymore. The cadence was entirely wrong. It was perfectly flat, and then it repeated the exact same phrase with the exact same pitch, the exact same breath at the end, like a recorded tape loop. "Dave, come down here. It's too dark." I dropped the walkie-talkie. It shattered on the concrete floor, but the speaker kept repeating that phrase, getting slightly faster and more distorted each time. I didn't finish my rounds. I ran down the stairwell, out the front doors, and locked myself in my car until the sun came up. When the morning crew arrived, they found the sub-basement doors ripped completely off their heavy iron hinges. From the inside out, I quit that morning. I don't care how much they pay. I am never being alone in the dark again. If you've never driven through the backroads of Oregon in late autumn, you don't understand what real fog looks like. It's not just a mist, it's a thick, gray wall that swallows your headlights and makes you feel like you're the last person left on Earth. It was 11 p.m. I was driving back from a business trip, taking a shortcut through a dense stretch of pine forest. My wife, Sarah, was safe at home, about 2 hours away. I had just spoken to her on the phone. She was getting into bed and told me to drive safe. The radio was nothing but dead static, so I turned it off. The only sound was the rhythmic thud of my windshield wipers. Then, out of nowhere, my headlights caught something lying in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, my tires skidding on the wet asphalt. I stopped just a few feet away from it. It looked like a large, heavy branch blocking both lanes. I sighed, put the car in park, and unbuckled my seatbelt to go move it. But just as my hand touched the door handle, I heard it coming from the deep, impenetrable darkness of the woods to my left. "Mark, please help me. It hurts." It was Sarah. She was crying, sobs of pure, genuine agony. My hand froze on the handle, my brain completely short-circuited. Sarah is at home. I just talked to her. "Mark, please, I can't see anything. Help me." The voice echoed through the fog. It was undeniably her. The way her voice cracked when she cried, the specific way she said my name. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run into those woods and save my wife. I grabbed my phone to call her, but there was zero signal, no service. I rolled down the window just a crack. "Sarah!" I yelled out into the mist. "Mark, come here, please. I'm right here behind the trees. I'm right here behind the trees." I grabbed my flashlight and pushed the door open. I took one step onto the wet road. I shined the beam into the tree line, but the fog bounced the light right back at me. As I took a second step toward the woods, the voice spoke again, but this time it made a mistake. "Mark, please help me, it hurts. Mark, please help me, it hurts." It repeated the exact same two sentences without taking a breath, and the sobbing, it wasn't natural anymore. It sounded like two different voices layered on top of each other, one crying and the other clicking. A wet, hollow clicking sound, like bones grinding together. I realized the branch in the road wasn't an accident, it was bait. I threw myself back into the driver's seat, slammed the door, and locked it. I threw the car into reverse and slammed the gas pedal, driving backward blindly through the fog for a quarter of a mile until I could turn around. I took the highway the rest of the way home. When I walked through the front door, Sarah was fast asleep in our bed, perfectly safe. I never told her what I heard that night. But sometimes, when she calls my name from another room, I hesitate before I answer.